London, May 1536. The air is heavy with rumor, tension, and the quiet dread of a nation that watches its queen fall from grace. Behind the cold walls of the Tower of London, Anne Boleyn, the second wife of King Henry VIII, waits for her fate. Once crowned in triumph, now she prepares for death. Anne Boleyn's rise had been nothing short of astonishing. The daughter of a courtier, she captured Henry VIII's heart, compelling him to break with the Catholic Church and declare himself supreme head of the Church of England. For years, Anne was the very center of Henry's universe. But by the spring of 1536, their marriage was unraveling. Anne had failed to give Henry the one thing he most desired, a living male heir. Their daughter Elizabeth was a healthy, bright child, but in the eyes of the king and of the dynasty, she was not enough. Court factions swirled, enemies whispered, and Henry's roving eye had settled on Jane Seymour, one of Anne's own ladies-in-waiting. By April, the trap was already closing. Thomas Cromwell, the king's ruthless minister, began to gather charges of adultery, incest, and treason against the queen. The accusations were staggering, shocking, and almost certainly fabricated. But in Henry's England, evidence was secondary to power. On May 2nd, 1536, Anne was arrested at Greenwich Palace. She was brought by boat to the Tower of London, the very place where she had once celebrated her coronation just 3 years earlier. Witnesses described her composure as extraordinary. When she first entered the tower, she fell to her knees, declaring, "O Lord, help me, as I am guiltless of the things whereof I am accused." But behind her courage was despair. She knew well the fate of those who fell from Henry's favor. The tower's cold stone walls became her world, guarded by soldiers who watched every move, while Cromwell's agents continued to collect confessions and forced testimony. On May 15th, Anne was brought to trial in the Tower's Great Hall, before a jury of peers that included her own uncle, the Duke of Norfolk. The charges were read: adultery with several men, including her own brother George Boleyn, conspiring to kill the king, and betraying the crown. Anne defended herself with eloquence and dignity. She denied each charge firmly, reminding the court of her loyalty to Henry and her innocence. Observers were struck by her composure and the sharpness of her words. Some accounts say that even her enemies were moved, but the verdict was never in doubt. The jury declared her guilty, her sentence to be either burned at the stake or beheaded at the king's pleasure. In the days that followed, Anne prepared herself for death. She prayed, received the sacrament, and spent time with her ladies. Despite the gravity of her fate, her courage never seemed to falter. Sir William Kingston, the constable of the Tower, recorded her words and demeanor. She spoke often of Henry, sometimes with sorrow, sometimes with hope that he would treat her daughter Elizabeth kindly. She confessed no guilt and seemed resigned, even calm. At first, her execution was scheduled for May 18th, but it was postponed. Henry had summoned an expert swordsman from Calais, promising Anne the swifter, cleaner death of a sword rather than the axe. This delay must have tortured her. Each day she prepared for the end, only for it to be postponed by the king's will. Dawn broke on Friday, May 19th. The tower was unusually quiet. Anne rose early and dressed with great care. She wore a gray damask gown trimmed with fur and a crimson kirtle beneath. Around her neck, she placed her small prayer book. She was escorted from her chambers to the scaffold, which had been erected within the tower grounds before a small crowd of courtiers and citizens. The French executioner stood waiting, his long sword concealed. Anne's final speech was measured and cautious. She praised Henry as a gracious and merciful prince, asked the crowd to pray for her, and commended her soul to God. Not once did she protest her innocence. To do so might have endangered her daughter Elizabeth. Instead, she chose dignity, silence, and faith. Kneeling on the straw, she removed her headdress, tucking her hair beneath a linen cap. Her ladies wept. Covering her eyes with a blindfold, she knelt upright, hands folded in prayer. The swordsman called for his assistant to fetch the sword, distracting Anne for a brief moment. In that instant, he raised the blade high and brought it down in a single, clean stroke. Anne Boleyn was dead at the age of about 35.